Close your eyes and imagine a village lost to time. No names etched in stone, no battles recorded in scrolls, just the hum of daily life, woven into rice fields, carried on river winds, whispered through spinning looms and cooking fires. This is not the story of emperors or generals. It's the story of those who lived quietly in the shadows of history. Tonight, we drift back to the Three Kingdoms, not to witness war, but to remember what remained. The rooster does not crow in defiance. It simply marks time, a moment, a reminder that another day has arrived quietly, just as the last one did. And so, we begin again. The sky is still heavy with sleep. A soft gray hue stretches low over the hills, blanketing the valley in a silence only the earliest hours can know. In this forgotten village, nestled deep in the gentle folds of Shu territory, war is not absent, but it is distant. The thunder of cavalry is a memory passed from one mouth to another, never quite real. Here, life does not gallop, it ambles. There is no name for this village that you would find in any great chronicle. No general slept here, no treaty was signed beneath its trees. It is not written in history, but it was lived in. A dirt path curves through the center, rutted by wheels and smoothed by countless bare feet. Flanked by low wooden homes, their walls made of rammed earth and bamboo, roofs heavy with thatch. A morning mist clings to their eaves, beating into droplets that fall like soft punctuation into the stillness. Inside one of these homes, the first breath of wakefulness stirs. A child stirs on a mat of woven straw, pulling a coarse hemp blanket tighter around her shoulders. Her breath is visible in the cool air. Beside her, an older brother is already sitting up, rubbing his eyes with the heel of his hand. Their room, if it can be called that, is separated from the main room by a thin reed screen, more symbolic than soundproof. The children rise without complaint, not because they were disciplined harshly, but because routine has been woven into their lives like the mats they sleep on. There is a rhythm to the village, and it begins before the sun. In the main room, their mother kneels beside the clay stove, coaxing the embers back to life with practiced patience. The fire crackles awake, casting a soft orange glow across the room. Above, a blackened iron pot waits to be filled. Soon, it will bubble with rice porridge, simple and warm. Father has already gone outside. His footsteps can be heard in the courtyard, sweeping leaves with a bundle of tied reeds. The soft rustle of the broom against dirt, the crispness of morning dew underfoot. Before anything else, there is reverence. In a quiet corner of the home, on a simple altar shelf, sit 3 ancestral tablets, each carved from wood, their edges darkened by time and incense. The children stand beside their mother as she lights a stick of incense, bows slowly, and places it in the small burner. The smoke rises in delicate curls. No words are needed. The act itself is prayer. In a time where the world outside rages in uncertainty, where borders shift and flags change with the whims of war, there is comfort in the permanence of ancestors. They are known, they are remembered, and in being remembered, they remain. The sun is not yet fully risen when the village begins to come alive. Thin plumes of smoke curl up from many homes now. Doors creak open, revealing faces still marked with sleep. Chickens flutter from their baskets, clucking softly as they begin their own search for breakfast. An old man, stooped with age, carries a bundle of kindling to a neighbor's home. his back bent not by burden, but by years of bending. He says nothing, but the gesture is clear. She is a widow, her son's gone to conscription, and the firewood is his way of remembering. Across the path, a young woman walks carefully with 2 buckets suspended from a shoulder pole, the water within swaying gently with each step. She hums a folk tune, not loud, but just enough to remind herself that this is her day. Her pace is unhurried. No one rushes here. A grandmother sits outside her home, already peeling turnips. Her fingers are slow, knotted with arthritis, but sure, she watches the street, not with interest, but with quiet ownership. She has seen 50, maybe 60, of these same mornings, each slightly different, each somehow the same. The village is cradled in a shallow valley, protected on all sides by low, rolling hills, thick with pine and wild bamboo. Fields spread out from the homes like soft green fingers. In the early light, the tips of millet and barley shimmer like frost. Beyond them, narrow footpaths wind between rice paddies, still wet from the previous day's irrigation. Further still, terraced hills rise in gentle tiers. From a distance, they look like steps carved by a giant, but up close, they are the work of many hands over many years, dug with care, reinforced with stone and sweat. Above it all, a single mountain looms in the distance, not tall enough to be daunting, but permanent, solid, a silent witness. Birds stir in the trees, the air is rich with damp earth and early blossoms. There is no wind, only the soft breath of the morning, cool and clean. Back inside, breakfast is nearly ready. The porridge is ladled into simple bowls. There are no elaborate spices, no imported ingredients, just rice, soaked and softened, perhaps with a few wild greens or fermented radish from a clay jar in the corner. They eat in near silence. The children slurp softly. Their mother watches them with tired eyes, but not unkind ones. There is no discussion of politics, no mention of generals, no talk of who controls the city gates today. This home, like so many in this era, exists quietly beneath the tide of history, not beneath its notice, but beneath its noise. The family speaks only of what matters now, the weather, the state of the fields, whether the neighbor's cow is still sick. After the meal, the father steps outside. He is a farmer, mostly, sometimes a builder when needed. His hands are thick and cracked, stained with earth. But this morning, he pauses. He stands at the edge of the field and breathes deeply. The mist is lifting now, rising into the treetops like smoke. Dew glistens on every leaf. The soil beneath his feet is soft, promising. He kneels and presses a hand to the earth. Not in prayer, not in superstition, just acknowledgement. This land has fed his father and his father's father. It has absorbed their sweat, their laughter, their bones, and today it will again. History, as we know it, tends to look upward. It watches emperors and heroes, palace intrigues, and battlefield maneuvers. But for every man who held a sword, 1,000 more held hoes and hammers. For every adviser who whispered into the ear of a ruler, 12 old women whispered lullabies into the ears of restless children. The people of this village, and of countless others like it, were not nameless to themselves. They were sons and daughters. They had nicknames, rivalries, stories told over fires, and in a way, they are the ones who kept the kingdoms alive. They planted food that fed the soldiers. They wove the clothes that clothed the courtiers. They raised children who would one day become the historians. By now, The sky has turned a pale gold. The sun, no longer timid, begins to warm the village roofs. Chickens roam freely, pecking at bugs. A dog stretches, yawns, then curls back up. A pair of children chase each other around a tree, their laughter scattering a flock of sparrows into the air. A traveling peddler ambles into view, his cart filled with brushes, thread, and small brass trinkets. The village doesn't need much, but he knows someone might want a new comb or a flask of ink. He calls out softly, more habit than expectation. A few elders emerge to greet him. There is no haggling, only quiet observation. He sets up a small mat and waits. There's no rush. They know he will return in a month. Soon, the rhythm of the village will pick up. Tools will be shouldered, rice shoots transplanted, cloth dyed, thread spun. But for now, this is the moment between, where the day has begun, but not yet declared itself. Where the past is behind, but the future is still far enough away not to matter. It is a moment easily missed in memory, but deeply lived in reality. And in this moment, the still golden morning, the village exists in perfect harmony, not with the empire, not with history, but with itself. The golden hush of morning gradually dissolves into soft movement, not all at once, but like the slow rippling of fabric, like water filling a low basin. In this village, time is not counted in hours or bells. It is measured by sound, scent, and sunlight. The crow of roosters becomes more frequent. The chorus of sparrows shifts from tentative chirps to a scattered symphony. A dog barks once, not out of fear, but habit, and then returns to its nap beneath the bench outside. The porridge pot is scrubbed clean and set aside to dry. The clay bowl wiped down and turned upside down on the kitchen shelf, ready for tomorrow. The mother sets to other tasks now. She begins to untangle the hemp thread she dyed days ago, planning to weave a new sash or a headscarf for the colder months to come. Her fingers move slowly, but with certainty. She doesn't hum, but her breath is steady, her presence an anchor in the drifting calm of the home. The day is not dictated by a clock. There is no ticking, no chime, no calendar on the wall. But even without these things, everyone knows what time it is. A boy walks past the home carrying a bundle of sticks. It is the hour for gathering kindling. A young woman heads toward the stream with a large clay jar. It is the time for filling water. A group of elderly women have taken up seats beneath the shade of a gnarled tree. It is the hour of conversation and mending. Every life here is braided into the same rhythm. It is not stillness, but flow. There is movement, but never haste. Tasks follow one another like footsteps on a well-worn path. The sun does not need to be chased. The work will not vanish if it waits. In a field, a short walk from the home, the father stands with a hoe slung across one shoulder. His figure is not remarkable, just one of many. But the way he moves carries meaning. He works with long, practiced strokes, carving thin trenches for water to flow between rows of vegetables. He wipes sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve, not hurried, not idle, just steady. He does not look toward the road. There are no carts coming, no envoys or banners, no sense of history passing by. But in truth, history is under his feet. With each hoe stroke, he draws lines that echo lines drawn by generations before him. Every furrow is both new and remembered. At the edge of the field, a crow hops along the irrigation ditch. Its feathers are dusty. It watches the farmer, then flies away. Nothing urgent, just another part of the day. The children, freed from morning chores, have found each other. They play near a cluster of trees at the edge of the village. There is no ball, no toy, but there are sticks, leaves, pebbles. These are enough. One girl is drawing patterns in the dust with a twig. Spirals, fish, what may be a dragon. Her friend watches, then begins drawing her own beside it. A flower, a sun, a series of small mountain shapes. A boy climbs a low tree branch and leaps off, trying to land near a specific stone. His sister claps softly, not loud enough to disturb the chickens. They do not yell. They do not compete. Their play is not a rehearsal for war or ambition. It is simply time, turned soft. They will remember these mornings not for what happened, but for how they felt. When the sun has risen high enough to flatten the shadows, the work slows. This is not laziness. It is wisdom. In the home, the mother has boiled a few wild greens with ginger into a light soup. A small bowl of salted fish sits beside it, dried days ago and rehydrated now with warm water. The family gathers to eat, seated on low stools around the hearth. There is no formality, no ritual, but the act carries weight. They do not eat quickly. They chew slowly, listening to the sounds outside, the rustle of leaves, the occasional call from another home, the flap of laundry on a line. After the meal, the father lies back on the floor mat, one hand resting on his stomach. His eyes remain open, fixed on the wooden beams above. The mother steps outside to sweep, her rhythm unhurried. Even the birds are quiet now, as if honoring the pause. In the quieter stretch of afternoon, the village takes on a softened hue. Some women gather in shaded spaces to weave, their looms low and simple, their threads dyed with earthy colors, indigo, chestnut, pale tea-stained yellow. They do not speak often, but their presence is a conversation in itself. Beside them, a baby naps in a bamboo basket. A young boy watches the spinning wheel turn, his head bobbing slightly with each rotation. He does not yet understand the work, but the motion soothes him. Nearby, a grandmother threads new twine through a basket. Her hands move with care, and every knot she ties seems to hold more than string. It holds memory. This is what fills the hours. Small acts, lovingly repeated. The village is not silent, but its sounds are soft, intimate. A reed flute echoes faintly from somewhere uphill. Not a performance, just a man keeping company with the breeze. The clink of pottery as someone stacks bowls to dry. A distant voice calling out, not in distress, but in greeting. Even the wind here is gentle. It does not howl, it rustles, it nudges. It slips through bamboo stalks like fingers parting hair. At the water's edge, a girl washes vegetables. Her sleeves are rolled up. She looks at her reflection, not with vanity, but curiosity. The ripples shift her image, but she stays still. In the Three Kingdoms period, the world was torn in three. Wei, Wu, Shu. Maps were redrawn, cities razed, alliances betrayed. But here, in this village, the shapes of days were never conquered. They simply bent, gently, like grass in wind. By the time shadows stretch long again, the village has begun its slow turning toward rest. The sun slides behind the hills with the same quiet grace it rose with. Smoke curls again from the homes, not in panic, not for warning, but for cooking. The rhythm repeats. Dinner is simple, maybe millet cakes, maybe root vegetables, maybe a duck egg carefully halved to share. There are no stories of battles, no poetry about generals, only small stories of who tripped today, of whose goat escaped, of whose baby finally said, "Mama." And these stories are enough. A mother braids her daughter's hair by the fire. A boy tries to whistle using a blade of grass. The father examines a cracked roof beam, then lets it be for now. And when night falls, it falls gently. No lanterns flicker dramatically. No ceremony marks the dark. Just a steady dimming as the stars slowly emerge, unbothered. The family lies down again on their straw mats, same as the night before, the same most likely as the night after. Outside, the owls stir. The frogs begin their chorus. Somewhere, a firefly draws a brief line of light in the dark. No one speaks. No one needs to. For the village and its people, the shape of this day has been full, not of events, but of presence. In the capital cities of the Three Kingdoms era, in Ye, Jianye, and Chengdu, the seasons arrived with fanfare, with poetry carved on ivory tablets, with plum blossom banquets, river lantern festivals, and silk robes dyed in the new season's hue. But in this quiet village, tucked away where no mapmaker bothers to draw a name, the seasons arrive not with ceremony, but with breath. A soft warming of the wind, the first frog song, a child waking to find dew on their eyelashes. Here, the seasons are not metaphor. They are memory. They are labor. They are time, passed hand to hand. The last frost slips away without farewell. Its exit is marked only by a change in how the soil feels. Less brittle, more forgiving. The clay no longer resists touch. It yields to the press of a farmer's heel, to the poke of a sprouting shoot. Before dawn, the men gather in the fields, not because a bell tolled or a decree was issued, but because the scent of the soil told them to. There are no planners, no scrolls of scheduled planting, only instinct, sharpened by repetition and the quiet teachings of fathers and mothers long gone. The father, now older, stoops with a practiced motion and breaks open a clump of earth with his hands. He crumbles it between his fingers, sniffing for moisture, watching how it falls. It tells him what he needs to know. Behind him, the son, older now too, walks barefoot along the furrows. He balances a basket of seedling rice shoots on his shoulder. Every few steps, he kneels and presses a shoot into the softened mud. And so the season begins. Near the footpath, women are already bent low, planting beans along the edges of their garden plots. Their sleeves are tied above the elbow. Their straw hats tilt low to shield from glare. They chat softly between movements, but their hands do not slow. One hums a tune, an old lullaby, or maybe a harvest song, and the others fall into its rhythm without noticing. Above them, the sky is pale and thin. A hawk circles once, then glides eastward. The fields stretch beneath it like a scroll, filled not with battles, but with breath. The children are quieter in the springtime, not solemn, just watchful. There is something sacred in how the world wakes up. They crouch beside the stream, watching new tadpoles flick through shallows. They pluck flower buds and line them in rows, pretending they are coins. A girl ties petals into her friend's braid. A boy follows an ant trail until it disappears into a crack in the earth. They are not told to observe, but they do, because everything in spring seems like it's waiting to be noticed. The grandmother, sitting with her back to the house, untangles old fishing nets. Her eyes, though cloudy, still catch the motion of bees in the distance. "The plum trees bloomed early this year," she murmurs, to no one in particular, and though no one answers, everyone seems to agree. When summer arrives, it does not creep. it crashes. One day the mornings are cool and hopeful. The next, the air hangs thick like wet cloth and sweat beads on the upper lip before breakfast. But the village does not complain. They rise earlier, they work longer. They know summer is not a thing to be endured. It is a thing to be used. The fields are lush and tall now. The rice paddies shimmer with heat. At midday, the air above them seems to bend and waver. Frogs leap from row to row, their croaks rising like gossip between the leaves. In one field, the father carves irrigation channels deep, not out of obligation, but because he has felt the heat before, and he knows the ground will dry faster this year. He carries water in buckets strung across his shoulders, swaying in rhythm with each step. The sun scorches his back, but his expression stays soft. Not far away, his wife checks the edges of the vegetable plots. The cucumbers are curling up nicely. The eggplants are flowering. She lifts a leaf to inspect a cluster of aphids and shakes them away with a twist of her wrist. She does not write down the harvest, but she remembers it all. Which plant bore well, which row needed weeding more often, which neighbor gifted better compost. Her knowledge is not written in ink. It is written in habit. Inside, the clay stove barely cools between meals. Summer brings abundance, yes, but also preservation. Vegetables are pickled in large jars, sealed with oil and wax. Fish are dried on racks beneath netting to keep out birds. Apricots are halved, salted, and set to dry on the flat roof of the house. The mother moves between each task with practiced grace, her hands stained with brine, her apron smudged with plum juice. A young girl helps by handing over spoons, folding cloths, tying jars. She is learning, though no one says she must. There are no tests, no scrolls, just repetition and observation. In the corner, the oldest daughter spins thread on a hand spindle. Her fingers are quick now. The spindle hums softly. It is not music, but it fills the room like one. Summer afternoons carry a strange heaviness. They are too hot for work, too bright for sleep, too slow for urgency. So the village finds ways to stretch the hours. Elders sit beneath the shade of the jujube tree. They do not speak often, but when they do, their words come slowly, as if to conserve breath. One tells a story of a fox that transformed into a beautiful woman. Another recalls the year the sky rained frogs. No one interrupts. No one disbelieves. Children sit nearby, weaving crowns of grass. A boy lies flat on his back, watching a single cloud drift. He names it Turtle under his breath. In this lull, nothing grand is created, but everything is remembered. Autumn arrives not with falling leaves, but with a change in smell. The air sharpens. The wind feels less like a hand and more like a whisper. Fires are lit more often. Meals get heartier. Shadows stretch longer. And in the fields, abundance. The rice is ready. The grains hang heavy, golden, bowing their heads like monks. The harvest must be fast. Birds sense it. So do mice. So does the weather. Men swing sickles in wide arcs. Their shirts cling to them soaked through. Women gather bundles, tie them tight, and pass them down the line. Teenagers thresh, stomping or beating the sheaves with flails, separating food from husk. There is no shouting, no overseers, only movement. Dust rises with each bundle beaten. It clings to sweat and brow. But no one stops. Not yet. Not until every grain is gathered. There is no festival, but the night after the final bundle is stored, the family eats together with a kind of quiet satisfaction. Sticky rice steamed in bamboo tubes, fish cooked with preserved radish, a handful of roasted chestnuts. The grandmother drinks half a cup of rice wine. The father smiles a little more than usual. The children sleep early, full and warm, and though no one lights lanterns or sings songs, something in the house feels lifted, held, as if the walls themselves are exhaling.
Winter arrives on soft feet. One day the well water is colder, the next the breath comes out in white puffs. The chickens huddle close to the coop walls. The goats bleat less. In the fields, only dry stubble remains. But inside the homes, a different kind of life begins. Mats are mended, clothes patched, tools sharpened. Meals become longer, slower, often cooked in large pots over low flames. Stories are told more freely now, perhaps because there is finally time to tell them. The mother sits close to the stove, darning a sock. The children sit in a circle, drawing figures in ash with sticks. One boy draws a mountain. A girl adds a bird above it. Another draws what might be a house. Outside, the wind howls through bamboo. Inside, the world is smaller, but warmer. The empire continues its wars. Maps are redrawn. Names rise and fall in court records. But here, in this village, none of that bends the shape of the day. Seasons arrive, work shifts, children grow, people age, and always the world turns without needing to be told how. There is no yearning for what is beyond the hills, not because the people are ignorant, but because they are deeply aware. Aware that the truest history is not always written in ink, but in repetition, in the swaying of rice, in the threading of a loom, in the thousand small acts that keep a life steady. In the stories of the Three Kingdoms, we read of battles, of broken oaths, of clever plots, and tragic ends. But none of that could happen, none of it, without villages like this one, without fathers who shaped the fields, without mothers who salted the fish, without children who laughed by the stream and someday passed their knowledge on. History looks upward, but civilization is held together from below. And in that holding there is power, not loud, not bloody, but essential, like seasons, like breath, like home. The morning is quieter than usual, not silent. The roosters still crow, the chickens still rustle. But something in the air has shifted. It is the kind of stillness that comes not from peace, but from waiting. A mother stands in the doorway, with a cloth in her hand, though she has forgotten what she meant to do with it. She squints up the road, a narrow path that winds through the hills, bordered by soft green underbrush and half-toppled stones. Nothing moves there. No dust, no cartwheel echo, no figure with news. But she watches anyway. Her son has been gone for 34 nights, maybe 35. She no longer counts by numbers. She counts by tasks. How many times she has boiled rice, how many mornings she has set aside a bowl and then put it back untouched. No messenger has come, no letter. But she still smooths her hair and tidies her home each day, just in case. In the next house, a grandmother pours hot water over tea leaves that have been reused twice already. She stares into the steam, watching it curl like questions with no answers. No one speaks of the war today, but they all feel its edge. Farther down the slope, a boy flies a kite, shaped like a hawk. His hands are calloused from chores, but they hold the twine gently, letting the wind do the work. The kite dances against the pale morning sky, dipping, gliding, climbing. From a distance, it might seem like play, but it is not. His brother flew this same kite a month ago, before the conscription notice came. Now the string feels heavier, as though it carries memory, not just cloth. His father watches from the field's edge. He does not call out, just nods once when the kite catches a strong gust and rises sharply. A small defiance against gravity, against worry, against time. Somewhere overhead, geese pass in formation. Their cries are faint but clear. The village dog lifts its head, listens, then lowers it again. Mid-morning brings activity, as it must. The village cannot pause, even when its heart is tired. In a shaded courtyard, women sit with bolts of cloth and trays of dye, indigo, ash gray, a yellow the color of pressed chrysanthemums. Their fingers work quickly, mending, folding, stitching, but their eyes flick toward the road. Just once in a while, they speak in soft tones, not gossip, not distraction, but gentle questions pass between one another like folded notes. "Have you heard from Lin's eldest?" "Not since the rains." "And Yao's cousin, is he still with the Shu garrison?" A pause, a nod. "So they say." The sentences do not linger. They are spoken, received, and tucked away, as if naming the distance makes it less sharp. A girl hums under her breath, not a song with words, just a melody that has lived in her family for as long as anyone remembers. It curls through the courtyard like a thread through fabric. At the far end of the village, beyond the well and the smithy, an old man sets out 3 flat stones in a row. He smooths a cloth over one, places a brush and ink beside it, and waits. He has been a teacher in the village for 40 years. Some days only one child comes, other days none. But he still prepares the stones. Today, a small boy arrives, hair askew and nose running. He sits cross-legged, watching the brush with wide eyes. The teacher smiles, dips the brush into the ink, and begins to write the character for quiet. He speaks as he writes. Stillness is not the absence of sound. It is the presence of attention. The boy does not fully understand, but he nods anyway, and beside the two of them, a sparrow lands on the stone wall, pecks once, and flies away. At midday, a curl of black smoke rises from the distant ridge. Not village smoke, not from cooking fires or burning brush. It is darker, heavier. No one shouts, no alarm is raised, but tools are set down, baskets are carried indoors, chickens are herded back into woven enclosures. A man climbs a nearby tree for a better view. When he comes down, his face is unreadable. He does not lie. He simply says, "Far enough." The unspoken words linger in the air like that smoke. The village resumes its rhythm, but a little more softly, a little more carefully. A woman draws water from the well and notices her hands tremble. She says nothing. She only steadies herself and draws again. That evening, the traveling peddler arrives again. He carries his usual wares, thread, vinegar, dried persimmons, but he also carries something else, expectation. Eyes follow him as he unrolls his mat. No one says it out loud, But everyone hopes. Perhaps a message? Perhaps a letter? A scrap of paper with a name they recognize. He sets down a satchel slowly, carefully. From it, he removes a wrapped bundle and unfolds it. Only trinkets, no letters, no seals, no word. A few villagers murmur thanks anyway. They buy a little thread, a bit of dye. The peddler offers a weak smile. He is not cruel, just empty-handed. The old teacher approaches and places a small coin in the man's palm. "Tell them," he says softly, "that we still wait." That night, the stars are visible between drifting clouds. The air is cool, the kind that carries distant sounds farther than usual. From one home comes the faint strum of a gukin, a simple melody played not for an audience, but for the self. Inside another home, a father carves a small wooden figure by lamplight. It is not a soldier, not a horse, just a rabbit, its ears long and uneven. He hands it to his daughter, who holds it as though it were made of jade. She asks, "When will brother come home?" The father does not answer quickly. He looks at the oil lamp, then the door, then the sky. "Soon," he says, not because he knows, but because she needs him to. The days stretch forward, one after the other. Still no letters. Still no names called out from the road. But the village does not dissolve. It adapts. New furrows are dug. New cloth is dyed. Babies are born. Roofs are patched. Rice is pounded. People marry. Elders die. And through it all, the waiting continues. It does not stop life. It becomes part of it, woven into the warp and weft of the day, like the hidden knots on the underside of a tapestry. Even the children learn not to ask too often. They simply glance toward the hilltop road when they hear footsteps, and then return to their game when the feet are only a neighbor's. Some forms of endurance are loud, shouted into wind, etched in stone, wrapped in legend. But in this village, endurance is quieter. It looks like a mother setting out an extra bowl each night, just in case. It sounds like a name spoken under the breath while mending a shirt that may never be worn again. It feels like sweeping the doorstep every morning, not because anyone is coming, but because someone once did. And sometimes late at night, a father sits on the stoop with his back to the moonlight and whispers stories to no one, or maybe to someone who might return someday. In the time of the Three Kingdoms, the world shook with movement. Warlords rose and fell. Cities were sacked and rebuilt. Great battles were written into bamboo scrolls and etched into memory by scholars and generals alike. But there were also days when nothing arrived. No news, no messenger, no certain sign of change. And in those days, in the long hush between thunderclaps, life did not pause. It continued. In villages like this one, history was not forgotten. It was simply lived. One breath, one bowl, one thread, one glance toward the road at a time. The first thing to vanish is not the water, it is the morning mist. That gentle veil that used to hover over the valley, softening rooftops, smoothing the edges of the hills, does not arrive this season. Day after day the sun rises to find the air dry and clear, the sky already too blue, too bare. Dew no longer gathers on the leaves. The villagers notice this, of course, but they say nothing at first. There are always odd seasons, strange mornings. There is always an uncle, a grandmother, someone older who recalls a time when the rains came late or not at all. But this year is different. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a slow, steady absence, a quiet waiting. The earth grows thirsty, but it does not crack. It hardens instead, like old bread left too long in the open. The paddies, once shimmering mirrors of sky and green, begin to dull, their surfaces drying into flakes and patches. The frogs grow quiet. The herons move on. In the village, the routines do not stop. They adjust. They tighten. Wells are checked twice daily now. The father visits before sunrise and again at dusk. He lowers the bucket slowly, listens closely for the splash. Each day the sound grows fainter, farther. No one speaks of it aloud, but the children begin to follow him, as if witnessing the water's retreat will somehow help them understand. The mother now collects the washing water after baths, once poured out without thought, now used again to rinse vegetables or soak brittle cloth. A new jar is placed near the door, not for drinking, but for wastewater. The line between what is used and what is still usable becomes thinner. The stream that once ran along the edge of the village grows sluggish. Its banks, once overgrown, are now walked freely, the exposed roots of bamboo trees like hands searching for something lost.
One morning, the grandmother sends the children out with clay bowls to catch dew from the bamboo leaves. It is a game at first. How many drops can one gather before the sun burns them away? But after a few days, they begin to take it more seriously. The youngest asks if it's true the mountain keeps a spring hidden in its chest. The older girl shakes her head. If it did, she says, we'd have found it by now. The rhythm of the village shifts. Again, not toward despair, but toward preservation. The hours of work are shortened. The fields are no longer drenched and dug, but dusted and swept. The tools are cleaned more often than they are used. The father's hoe leans by the doorway longer now, its metal head dry, untouched. They do not call it a crisis. That is not their word. To them, it is simply a bad year, and bad years have come before. What matters most is remembering how to endure them. The vegetables are planted deeper now, in hopes that roots might reach the older moisture. Buckets are used instead of ladles. The irrigation trenches, once cut broad and wide, are narrowed and softened, coaxing whatever trickle remains to run slower, more thoughtfully. The old woman who sells sesame oil from the next village over does not come this month, nor the one after. The traveling peddler with ink and combs leaves his path a week early, citing poor harvests. Meals become plainer and smaller. Rice is mixed with barley, then with millet, then stretched with wild herbs and dried turnip. The pickled radish jar is emptied more quickly than expected, and not refilled. The mother learns to slice root vegetables into finer strips so that they look more on the plate, even if they are not. Water is boiled in the morning, poured into a tall ceramic jar, and covered with cloth. The family drinks it slowly throughout the day, each taking only a small cup. The children learn not to ask for a second. One afternoon, the father walks to the far edge of the valley. He carries a jar of tea leaves, a gift meant for trade, hoping to find a spring he once heard about as a boy. He returns with empty hands, dust-covered feet, and no complaint. He says only, "It's gone quiet out there."
They have not yet reached hunger, but they have learned to feel the shadow of it, lingering just beyond the garden, waiting. There is no sound more heartbreaking than silence where water once was. The birds that once chirped and scattered now sit still on high branches, their feathers dusty, their songs brief. The reed flute that once echoed faintly in the afternoons is no longer heard. Perhaps the old man who played it has grown tired, or perhaps even the air now resists music. The well creaks with each lowering of the rope. The children no longer ask to pull it themselves. They understand that every turn of the crank, every drop, now carries weight. At night, the family lies on their mats as always, but their dreams are louder now. They speak more in sleep, murmur more. One night, the youngest cries out, asking for snow. The mother places her hand gently on his forehead. It is not hot, but it is dry. Rumors begin as they always do, that the rains have returned to a village farther east, that a certain herb can summon clouds, that a prayer whispered at midnight facing the northern hill will be heard. Some of the villagers try them. A few stand beneath the trees before dawn, palms raised to the sky. Others burn bundles of dry grass, letting the smoke rise in tribute. Nothing changes, and yet in the doing there is comfort. The grandmother ties a red ribbon around the garden post, not for superstition, she says, but to remind the plants they are not alone. The mother sweeps the doorway 3 times each morning, not for cleanliness, but for continuity. And one morning, a boy plants a single green bean sprout in a cracked teacup, sets it on the windowsill, and whispers to it, "Just in case." By late summer, the village no longer waits for the rain. It waits despite it. Laundry dries before it is fully pinned. Chickens peck the ground with dull persistence. Dogs lie beneath the raised platforms of the homes, panting quietly. The soil no longer smells of earth. It smells of ash. But life continues. Children still play, now with fans made of split bamboo, chasing whatever breeze they can find. The grandmother still knits twine, now thinner, tighter. The father, who used to spend his evenings sharpening tools, now spends them cleaning and oiling them instead. He says nothing, but his hands are steady. And one night, when a false wind stirs and the smell of dry lightning rolls across the hills, the mother stands outside and stares at the horizon for a long time. When the flash comes, she does not flinch. She only whispers, "Not yet." It comes not with thunder, not with warning, but with a single tap. A drop, then another, then another. The first rain in many moons does not pour. It taps, soft, sparse, like fingers drumming on old wood. The children are the first to notice. They run outside, arms outstretched, mouths open. The mother calls out, not in alarm, but surprise. The father steps into the yard, palm upward. A few drops kiss his hand, then vanish into his skin. It is not enough to fill a cup, not enough to wet the roof, but it is rain. The villagers do not cheer, they do not sing, they simply pause, heads tilted upward, eyes closed, as if trying to remember the shape of water on skin. In the days that follow, the rain does not return, but its echo remains. The earth softens slightly, the leaves perk, the well's rope creaks a little louder, as if hopeful. The children return to the bamboo leaves with their bowls, and this time find more than dust. The family's meals are still modest, but now they are eaten with less caution. The mother hums while sweeping again. The father sharpens his hoe. The bean sprout in the teacup unfurls a second leaf. The grandmother smiles. And across the valley, the smallest trickle of water begins again in the stream bed, winding slowly, as if unsure of the way back. The year without rain is not marked on calendars. It will not be remembered in scrolls or records. No general lost a battle because of it. No emperor even heard of the village's thirst. But those who lived it will not forget. They will remember the weight of a single cup of water, the silence of a drying stream, the smell of dust in their bed sheets, the roughness of their tongues in the night. And they will remember the first drop, that soft, hesitant reminder that the sky still knew they existed. Because sometimes history is not what breaks us. Sometimes it is what we survive quietly, together. The city is not loud, not in the way it could be. It hums like a tightened string. Beneath the stone walkways and carved eaves, beneath the painted beams and heavy roof tiles, there is a tension that does not shout, but waits. A capital does not need to announce itself. Its weight is in its stillness. Here, in this corner of the empire, the streets of the capital wind in angles designed for order. Straight roads, watchtowers spaced evenly, water channels dug with geometric precision. Even the trees planted along the avenues seem to bow politely toward a central will. But order, like silence, is not the same as peace. It is morning again, but it is not like the village's morning. There is no mist that softens the edges of things, no rooster's cry floating lazily across a valley. Here, morning begins with the clatter of boots on stone, the rattle of shop fronts being unbarred, the thin shriek of a caged bird calling from a balcony, already awake before the sun. And yet, even here, life stirs gently at first. In the courtyard of a modest scholar's home, a young servant boy brushes last night's leaves into a pile. The broom is made of twigs, bound tightly, and its scratching across the stone tiles sounds like a whisper being dragged through paper. His mistress, the scholar's wife, opens the shutters from inside and leans out, her gaze not fixed on the alley, but somewhere past the walls. She is not old, but her eyes are tired in a way that comes not from work, but from watching, from waiting, from wondering. A child stirs inside, a boy, perhaps 5 or 6, still in his bedroll, still half inside his dreams. He murmurs something, then turns, and the mat crackles under him. There is no urgency in his waking. He does not yet know what the city requires. Outside the scholar's gate, the alleys begin to fill. Vendors push their carts into place, oil lamps, lit not for light now, but to warm the dishes they will sell by midday. One man slices bean curd with a long, flat knife. The pieces fall like paper into the tray. Another arranges a pyramid of steamed buns, their surfaces gleaming like pale moons. Everything is simple but exact. The angle of the knife, the way the broth simmers not too fast,
Every movement is a performance, and every performance must be precise, because here in the capital, eyes are always watching. Some eyes are known: the city patrol, the magistrate's assistants, the clerks who pretend to look only at scrolls but see far more. But others are not. Rumors drift like incense, scenting everything, but with no visible source. Who is speaking with whom? Who is not at their usual post? Why is that merchant suddenly closing early? In a time when kingdoms rise and fall in a season, suspicion becomes its own form of currency. Near the administrative quarter, a clerk walks quickly between offices. His robe is modest but clean, his belt tied tightly. He carries a bundle of bamboo slips bound with string, nothing grand, just land records. But even so, he keeps his head lowered slightly and moves without pause, not rushing, just avoiding attention. He has memorized the names, the seals, the locations. He knows which slip to show which superior. He knows how to bow, deeply enough to show respect, but not so deeply as to suggest fear. He knows, too, how to speak of the weather, how to mention the rice harvest in passing, how to avoid the names of generals and warlords altogether. He is not ambitious, this clerk, but he is careful. And in this city, at this time, careful is the only way to survive. Elsewhere, in a quiet side hall of a government compound, a woman pours tea for her superior. Her sleeves are long, her movements studied. She is not a servant. She is a scribe, educated, respected in her post. But in this moment, she pours tea as if it were ceremony, because in a way, it is. The man she serves is old, with a graying beard and a voice like smoothed stone. He does not look at her as she works. His gaze is fixed on a wall scroll, something about the balance of virtue and law. The room smells faintly of ink and ash. When she sets the tea down, he finally speaks. He does not ask for news. He does not give orders. Instead, he says only, "Tell me what you haven't written." She pauses. Her mouth is dry. Then, softly, she replies, "The governor's son has returned. Quietly, no trumpet." A pause. "From the west?" "Yes." The man nods once and sips his tea. Nothing else is said, but everything has changed. At the city's edge, near the southern gate, a caravan waits to be admitted. The guards inspect the crates, bolts of cloth, dried apricots, metal tools, all accounted for. But what they're really watching is not the goods, but the people. Who speaks first? Who keeps their eyes low? Who sweats in the shade? One of the merchants laughs too loudly. The guard marks this, but says nothing. The wagons creak forward slowly, one by one, and with each step, the city pulls them inward, not with force, but with gravity. In the crowd, a beggar girl watches from the steps of a shrine. Her hair is matted. Her eyes are sharp. She sees everything: the guard's signals, the merchant's nervous smile, the man in scholar's robes pretending to look at coins. She doesn't know their names, but she knows which ones will be gone by morning, and which ones will stay. She stands, dusts her knees, and slips back into the alley. As midday approaches, the city breathes in. Shadows shrink. The sun leans hard against the roof tiles. The water sellers begin to shout. In the market square, arguments flare, short, hot, and mostly harmless. A fish vendor slaps at flies. A basket topples. A child wails, more from surprise than pain. And then it settles again.
like a heartbeat that races, then calms. Inside a tea house, shaded by carved wood lattice, a small group of students debates poetry. One insists that meaning is found in form. Another argues for feeling. A third says both are meaningless in times like these. They do not speak of war, but their tones are edged, their metaphors sharpened. And above them, on the second-floor balcony, an older man listens without listening, his eyes half closed, his cup untouched. He remembers when poetry could change an emperor's mind. Now, it can barely change the conversation. As afternoon passes into the long slope of evening, the city becomes more beautiful, not because of gold or marble or silk banners, but because of light. The sun slides low between the buildings, gilding everything with amber. The courtyards echo with the gentle clatter of dishes being cleaned, the rustle of robes as neighbors greet each other. On a rooftop near the northern wall, a woman tends her garden, not flowers, but herbs, mint, ginger, scallion, mugwort. She waters carefully, with a bowl, not a pail. She is not young. Her hair is tied in a knot, held by a carved stick. Her face is unreadable. Below, her husband sharpens a blade, not a sword, a kitchen knife. They have lived here for years, moved once during the fire, lost a son long ago to something no longer spoken of. They do not attend court, they do not speak of politics, but they keep their home clean, their door hinges oiled, their rice covered, and in this they have resisted all that history has thrown at them. When night finally comes, it is without fanfare. The city does not sleep, but it softens. The lamps are lit, one by one, and their glow pools along the streets like melted gold. A flute plays from a courtyard. A dog barks twice, then falls silent. In a small study, the scholar writes by lamplight. His hand is steady, though the characters come slowly. He pauses often, not to think, but to listen. He hears his wife folding laundry, their child breathing softly in sleep, the faint creak of the ceiling beam. He dips his brush again and writes a single line. The wind passed through the capital and did not stop. He does not know if it's a poem. He does not care. He closes the scroll, blows out the lamp, and lies down. Outside, the city hums on. History will record the battles, the oaths, the betrayals. But it is here, in these quiet moments, in shadows, in silence, that the true shape of the capital can be found, not as a monument, but as a murmur. The sky has turned the color of worn parchment, not quite gold, not quite gray, the hue of a day that has forgotten how to shine. In the distance, dust lifts lazily from the earth, not whipped by wind, but stirred by footsteps, by carts, by quiet motion. It is market day, not a great market, not like those held near river ports or within city walls. This is a roadside meeting, a soft murmur of trade. A few dozen families walk from the scattered hamlets surrounding the village, each bringing what they have: dried mushrooms, woven baskets, a few clay jars of plum wine, a bundle of firewood tied with rice straw. Things made or gathered, bartered for or carried. By midday, the center of the village is filled not with noise, but with presence. The square is not paved, just packed earth, but it holds the weight of ritual. A woman smooths her apron and sets her wares on a mat. A man counts coins twice before placing them in his sleeve. Children weave between the adults, eyes wide, not with greed, but with wonder. Even the familiar looks different here, more possible somehow. There is no shouting, no barked bargains. Every exchange is done in low tones, in nods and gestures, not out of fear, but reverence, as though the market is not a place for commerce, but for remembering that others still live, still need, still make.
Near the edge of the square, an old woman sits behind a basket of medicinal herbs. Her face is carved by time, but her hands move deftly, separating stalks of wormwood from bundles of dried chrysanthemum. She does not advertise her knowledge. Those who need her already know. A young man with a limp approaches. He removes his hat and bows, low and slow. She says nothing, only hands him a folded cloth filled with bitter-smelling leaves. He bows again, and she returns to her sorting. Beside her, another elder displays charms made from string and peachwood. Not talismans of great power, but small things. To hang from cradles, to tie around wrists, for protection, for peace of mind. He sells few, but still he comes every month, like he always has, like he always will.
Nearby, a storyteller sets up on a worn bench. His beard is streaked with white, and his robe has seen better days, but his voice carries like a breeze through pine. Children gather first, then older ones, then adults who pretend they're only listening and passing. He tells an old tale, one of the Yellow Emperor, or perhaps it was a fox spirit. The details shift, the point does not. That stories, even whispered, are stronger than silence.
At the northern edge of the village stands a shrine humble, with wooden eaves and a stone platform worn smooth by years of footsteps and prayer. On market days, it is not the busiest place, but always watched. A few visitors bring offerings, a pair of incense sticks, a folded paper prayer weighed down with a pebble. A girl kneels and places a worn sandal on the altar, just one, its pair lost in the stream weeks ago. She bows 3 times, eyes closed, but the gesture is received. That is enough. An elderly man stops by to sweep the steps, though no one has asked him to. He does it because his father once did, and his father before that. He hums a tune no one else remembers. In the shade near the shrine wall, 2 women exchange quiet stories. Not about war, not about politics, just about the price of vinegar and the weather last year. Their conversation is a kind of incense too, less visible, but no less fragrant. A wind picks up. The paper prayer flutters once, then stills again. Later in the day, a traveler arrives. Not the regular peddler, but someone new. His clothing is city-spun, and his accent bears the lilt of the river provinces. He carries a lacquer box, wrapped in waxed cloth. Inside, paper charms, ink sticks, and a fan with a poem hand-painted along its edge. He lays them out carefully with quiet pride. The villagers regard him with a mix of curiosity and caution. One man purchases a strip of red paper with a character painted bold and black. Fortune, it reads. He will hang it near his door, not for luck, but for remembrance. A woman buys a narrow scroll for her son not because the boy can read, but because the strokes of the calligraphy remind her of his father's handwriting, long gone now. Sometimes he gives something for free, a pressed flower tucked into a folded page, or a scrap of silk just big enough to patch a tear. By evening his box is lighter, but his heart is not. He will return not for profit, but because something here felt whole. As the sky begins to deepen, not yet night, but no longer day, someone lights a lantern. Then another, and another. Not a festival, not a celebration,
just the marking of time, the soft boundary between what has passed and what is still to come. Children chase each other with tiny reed torches, their laughter skipping like stones across water. An old man ties his lantern to a stick and plants it near the shrine. He says it is for his wife, who loved market days, though she has not walked among them in 6 seasons. A mother lifts her daughter to let her hang a lantern from a tree branch. It is small, made from rice paper and bamboo, shaped like a lotus. When it sways in the breeze, its petals seem to open and close. No one tells the children to be quiet, but they are. Not hushed, just softened, the way people get when they feel part of something larger than themselves. Lanterns flicker, shadows stretch, the dust settles. In the final hours of the market, trade slows, but the exchanges do not. A woman unrolls a bolt of fabric, pale green, with a pattern of cranes stitched in gray. Another woman fingers the edge and smiles. "I remember this," she says. "Your mother made one like it for my wedding." "She used this pattern for your veil," the first replies. They do not buy or sell, they just share. The cloth is folded again, but the memory remains. In another corner, a man passes a fishing hook to a boy barely tall enough to see the table. "Your grandfather taught me to tie this knot," he says. "Use it well." No coin changes hands, but something else does. Something quieter and longer lasting. As the sun finally slips behind the hills, the market begins to drift apart, not in haste, but in gentle unraveling. Mats are rolled, jars packed, baskets hoisted onto shoulders. No one lingers, but no one hurries. The rhythm of the day has softened, turned inward. A child clutches a straw doll newly traded. A man carries a bundle of firewood tied with twine and care. A grandmother wraps leftover herbs in cloth and tucks them into her sleeve, humming. Someone sings, low, slow, tuneless. It carries just far enough to be heard by those still packing. And as the last of the traders fade into the road's curve, the square is empty once again, but not quiet, not forgotten, only resting. In times of war, records are kept in ink and blood, ledgers of loss, chronicles of conquest. But in this village, in this small market, held once a month beside a well and a shrine, history takes a different form. It is carried in the calloused hands that lift dye jars and pass loaves. It is folded into the fabric, traded between women who share recipes and sorrows. It is hidden in the ink strokes of a traveling stranger's fan, in the way the children run toward the lantern light, trusting it will always return. These things are not written down. They are not proclaimed or praised, but they are kept. And someday, long after the battles of this age are forgotten, someone might remember the way a bowl of plum wine was handed across a mat, or the way an old teacher once lit a lantern with hands that shook only slightly. And that will be enough. For history, too, lives in dust and in the glow of lanterns that mark where life has been and where it dares to continue. The fog does not come in with drama. It does not billow or rush. It simply arrives sometime in the dark hours before dawn and settles like a forgotten blanket over the village. By morning, the rooftops are gray smudges. Trees appear only in suggestion, their limbs drawn in strokes of pale charcoal. The usual sounds are muffled,
chickens cluck somewhere, but the coops are hidden. The smith's bellows hiss, though no glow is seen, and the road, the winding thread that disappears into the hills, has vanished entirely, as if erased by the gods. People speak in lower tones. They move more carefully, as if afraid of slipping into some unseen crevice just beyond the mist. There is no rain, no wind, just fog, thick and unmoving, and the sense that something, somewhere, has shifted.
By midday, the villagers begin lighting lanterns, not for festival, not for joy, but for bearing. Each household hangs one outside its door, a simple paper shell, many repaired with thread or patched with rice glue. They flicker faintly in the soft light like fireflies trapped in jars. The fog seems to mute their glow, but not diminish it. Children ask why the lanterns are lit when the sun is up. "Because not all darkness comes at night," says one mother, adjusting the wick. "Because we don't want to lose each other," says a father, hammering a post into the damp earth. And slowly, the lanterns become more than just light. They are signals, markers, a way to say, "We are still here."
That afternoon, a stranger arrives. Or rather, he emerges. No one saw him on the road. He simply appears at the edge of the village, wrapped in a tattered cloak, his feet coated with red dust. He is not a soldier, though his clothes carry the scent of campfires and iron. He is not a monk, though he bows gently when spoken to. He carries no news, only a torn banner wrapped tightly around his pack. Its faded markings once belonged to a garrison that, according to rumor, no longer exists. He does not ask for food, only water, and when pressed about his journey, he says only, "I walk until I hear a name I recognize." No one knows what to do with this answer, so they give him tea, a place to rest, a seat beside the lanterns. That night, he disappears into the fog again. Whether forward or backward, no one can say.
The next morning, the fog is thicker still. But daily life cannot wait. A child feeds chickens, counting them aloud with each toss of grain. An elder grinds dried herbs for tonic. A pot clinks against stone as someone prepares congee, thick and bland, but warm. In the tailor's yard, strips of cloth are hung in the mist to absorb dew, a long practice technique believed to bring softness. Even the smith returns to his forge, striking metal that sings dully through the shroud. The rituals of survival remain. If anything, they deepen. The body needs movement to stay steady, and the mind needs rhythm to withstand uncertainty.
By late morning, figures gather beneath the roof edges, where the fog thins slightly. They speak in quiet pairs, in trios, never loudly, never with laughter. It is not gossip, it is something softer, more careful.
Did the trader return from Changsha?
No, only his horse.
Someone saw fires in the south last week.
No, that was old forest clearing, maybe. Voices rise and fall like waves on a pond, never forming storms, only ripples. Children sit nearby, silent, listening, learning the new language of half-truths and cautious hope. The fog makes it hard to see faces clearly, but the eyes, always the eyes, betray what the voices do not say. Near the village's shrine, an old woman lights incense earlier than usual. She sweeps the stones, clears cobwebs, and straightens offerings. She murmurs names as she does. Her husband's brother, her son's friend, her niece's neighbor. Names of the unreturned, the unfound. Others join her. Not many, not formally, but quietly, Over the course of the day, each brings a stick of incense, a folded slip of paper, a dried blossom. They do not say the names out loud. Not fully. It is not mourning, they insist. Just remembrance. Just caution. Inside their homes, extra bowls remain set, extra chairs stay pulled out, not in sadness, not in expectation, just in case.
In the corner of the village, where an old mulberry tree bends low over a mossy fence, lives a man known simply as the Lantern Maker. He speaks rarely, smiles often, and when he does speak, it is to birds. But in the fog, he becomes a quiet sentinel. He begins crafting lanterns again. Not fancy ones, not for festival, just sturdy paper globes, patched from old scrolls, dyed with leftover ink, stitched with thread too short for mending clothes. One by one, he delivers them, ties them gently to doorways, leaves without knocking. When asked why, he shrugs. Then, in a soft voice, says, "So we can find each other, if the mist stays." On the 6th day, the fog thins slightly. It does not vanish, but it loosens. Trees regain outlines. Fields return in muted greens. The path to the hills becomes faintly visible again. And then, shapes. Figures, distant and small, move slowly along the ridge, too far to identify. Are they travelers, soldiers, merchants, fugitives? No one knows. No one dares call out. The villagers do not rush. They simply watch, as if the act of watching will keep the shapes from dissolving. But eventually the fog folds in again. The silhouettes vanish, and the stillness returns. That afternoon, under the leaning mulberry tree, the teacher gathers the children. Not in the schoolyard, the stones there are too damp, but beneath a tarp strung between fence posts. He holds up a blank scroll. "This," he says, "is part of the story." The children frown, some giggle. One raises her hand and says, "There's nothing there." The teacher nods. "Not yet." He dips his brush in ink, then pauses. "Sometimes," he says slowly, "what we don't know is just as important as what we do. Because in the space of not knowing, we wait, we wonder, and we care." The brush remains still. The scroll stays blank, but no one complains. That night, the village is quiet again. Lanterns sway in soft wind. Their light is pale, but persistent. Inside one home, a man repairs a window frame, even though the glass has long been cracked. Inside another, a girl rewrites a poem on fresh paper, even though the old copy was never read. In the lantern maker's house, an extra lantern is left lit on the windowsill, just in case a traveler passes and needs to know where kindness lives. No messages arrive, no soldiers come. The fog remains, but the lights, those soft, flickering signs of life, endure. Even if no one returns, the village has not vanished. It is still here, visible, warm, waiting, alive. The river never stops speaking. It murmurs in daylight and in darkness, through drought and flood, through the quiet steps of old fishermen and the clumsy boots of passing soldiers. Its voice is always there, beneath the surface of things,
never loud, but always present. On this morning, mist clings to the river's skin like breath on a cold mirror. The banks are soft, darkened by dew, and reeds shiver without wind. Far upstream, a crane stands motionless on one leg, waiting for the day to begin. Its reflection ripples gently with the current. The river here is neither mighty nor small. It is the kind that nourishes rice fields and gossip alike, that children are warned to respect but not fear. It divides the village from the outer world, not as a wall, but as a line drawn in water. A boundary that changes with the seasons, like everything else. At the ferry dock, a narrow platform built from stone and rope, a boatman ties up his skiff and yawns into the gray light. His hands are cracked and swollen from decades of rowing, but his grip is steady. He listens not to clocks, but to the river's rhythm, the small creaks of the rope, the tug of current against hull, the voices of frogs calling from the far shore. Today there will be travelers. He can feel it. The first to arrive at the dock is not a man, but a gourd. It bobs gently near the water's edge, caught in a tangle of reeds. Its surface is scuffed. A red cord is tied to its stem. A fisherman's charm, perhaps, or a child's forgotten toy. But here, even small things carry questions. The boatman retrieves it, examines the seal near its mouth, and places it quietly on a flat stone beside the dock. He does not open it. That is not his place. If it holds a message, the river will choose whom to give it to. Later that morning, a woman arrives carrying a bundle wrapped in linen. She wears a traveling hat, wide-brimmed and faded, and her voice is low when she speaks. "I must reach the opposite bank before noon," she says. The boatman nods. He does not ask why, only gestures to the boat. On the opposite side of the river, slightly raised on a worn terrace of stone and moss, stands an old tea pavilion. Its roof is crooked. Its beams are marked with generations of carved initials, love declarations, faded poetry scratched in soft script. No one remembers who built it, only that it has always been there. By midday, it is occupied by 3 figures. The first is a local courier, not an imperial messenger, but the kind who carries letters between villages, using memory and calloused feet instead of maps. He sits with his legs folded beneath him, sipping ginger tea from a cup with a chipped rim. The second is an herbalist, a young woman with sleeves rolled to her elbows, sorting dried roots and moss into small paper packets. She works quietly, but occasionally murmurs to herself, naming each plant with reverence, as though greeting old friends. The third is a stranger. He wears the uniform of a shoe auxiliary, not a high-ranking officer, but someone who has marched, someone whose boots remember the feel of distant mud. His left hand trembles slightly, not from cold. They speak without urgency. "Where are you headed?" the courier asks. "South," the soldier says, "if the bridge still stands." The herbalist looks up. "They say it does. For now." The soldier nods, sips his tea, says nothing more. In the hush that follows, the river speaks again, lapping softly at its banks, carrying voices from one world to another. Back in the village, beneath the great willow tree near the northern paddies, A girl sits cross-legged in the grass with a lute cradled in her arms. The instrument is too large for her. Her fingers stumble, but she does not play for applause. She sings a tune that has no audience, not truly. Her voice is untrained, but clear. She learned the song from her grandmother, who learned it from someone long buried. The words are fragments, patched together from memory, but the melody holds. Across the river, the lanterns shine, but I light none and call no name. Nearby, a farmer hears her, but does not interrupt. He lifts a bucket from the well and lets her voice drift on. Some things are not meant to be acknowledged. By late afternoon, the girl has stopped singing. The lute lies beside her in the grass, and she lies back staring at the clouds. She hums the melody one last time, not for others, but to remember. A traveler appears near dusk. He carries no pack, only a walking stick and a pouch of dates. His robe is stained from long journeying, and his straw hat hangs down his back. He walks with the ease of someone who knows the road, but not where it leads. The village children spot him first. They do not run to greet him, but they watch closely. He pauses near the blacksmith's shop, where the coals glow like eyes. He asks for no blade, no horseshoe, only water. The blacksmith pours it from a bamboo flask, hands it over silently. Their eyes meet briefly. There is recognition, but neither names it. Later that evening, the traveler finds himself at the riverbank. He kneels and washes his hands. The water is cool, but not cold. Clean, but never still. He murmurs something, a name, a memory. And as he rises, a gourd floats by, the same one from earlier. It has returned, though none saw it pass upstream. The traveler catches it, opens the seal, and reads the slip of paper within. And he smiles. That night, the village prepares something quiet but sacred, a festival of sorts, though no drums, no trumpets, only lanterns. Each family writes a name or a wish on a square of rice paper. These are folded, tied gently to small wooden frames, and placed inside paper lanterns lined with wax. When the moon rises fully, they are carried to the river's edge. One by one, the villagers kneel and release them. Some lanterns bear names of sons or daughters far away. Others carry words like safe journey, peace, or simply return. The river accepts them all. The lanterns drift gently downstream, flickering like fireflies. No one speaks. Some close their eyes. Some watch until the lanterns disappear beyond the bend. A boy whispers, "Will they reach the sea?" An elder answers, "Some will, some may sink, but every one is seen." Near the far end of the village, a fisherman dreams. In his dream, the river speaks clearly, not in words, but in images. He sees an ox cart crossing a flooded bridge, a woman kneeling beside a well, a soldier washing his blade in silence, a child holding a paper rabbit, a name scratched into bark. He wakes before dawn. The stars are still out. The river is calm. He steps outside, barefoot, and walks to the dock. The boat is already moving, not from wind or wave, but as if summoned. He climbs in. No oar, no direction, but he rows. The fields breathe again. After seasons of drought and discord, the earth begins to soften. Green threads emerge from soil once cracked and exhausted. The paddies glisten in the morning light, water restored to the channels that carry life from mountain spring to footpath. The village stirs, not with celebration, but with careful hope. No fanfare, no banners, just the quiet motion of hands returning to tasks they never truly abandoned. Repairing fences, reseeding plots, lifting buckets of water with new care as if the act itself is sacred. Life does not return all at once. It trickles back, like rain after silence. The older farmers say nothing, but their shoulders ease. The children run farther than they used to. Even the dogs sleep deeper in the sun. It is not peace, but it is not war. It is the space between. In the back room of a modest home, a woman sits at a low loom. The thread she feeds into the shuttle was spun by her own hand, dyed in walnut husk and bark ash. It is not silk, too rare for now, but sturdy hemp, soft from many rinses. Each pass of the shuttle is like breath, forward, return, forward, return. The fabric that forms is plain, but strong. She will cut it into tunics for the children, or perhaps a funeral cloth for her aging mother. Or perhaps something else. She does not decide now, only weaves. Her daughter sits nearby, threading beads onto a string. The colors are faded, pulled from an old sash, but arranged with care. "It's a story," the girl says quietly. The mother smiles, not looking up. "Then make sure it ends well." The girl pauses. "Do stories have to end?" The mother does not answer, but the loom keeps moving. At the village square, the market returns, not as it once was, not yet, but enough for trade. A woman sells preserved radish in pickling jars, carefully labeled with tiny calligraphy. A potter displays bowls, still warm from the kiln, glazes pooled like river stones. One stall remains untouched. A blank cloth where, in years past, a man once sold candied plums and winter pears soaked in honey. Some say he left to join his brother's militia. Others whisper that he was taken in a night raid. His cart burned in the fields. No one removes the cloth. Each week someone places a single plum where the stall once buzzed with life. This week it is the village scribe. He sets it down gently, bows once, and continues on. It is not forgetting. It is the opposite. In the forge, the blacksmith shapes no weapons today. Instead, he repairs a broken hinge from a temple gate. He replaces a rusted ring for a farmer's pail. He sharpens a kitchen knife, dulled by years of cutting root vegetables and tough stems. The fire burns low, not roaring, just steady. His apprentice, a boy of 12, watches each strike with silent reverence. He asks no questions, only mirrors the movements in air, his hands tracing imagined arcs. "Will the war come back?" the boy asks suddenly. The blacksmith pauses. He sets the hammer down, wipes his brow. "It always does," he says, "but not today." And with that, he lifts the hinge to inspect its edge. In the small shrine near the village's western boundary, there is a box. Its lid is carved with phoenixes, their wings worn smooth by years of wind and touch. No one tends it officially, yet it is never empty. Inside are letters, not for post, but for keeping. Messages written to those who have gone or never arrived. Paper folded carefully. Names hidden inside. I still remember the song you hummed when it rained. I boiled the fish bones too long again. You used to laugh at that. Your son is walking now. He favors your left hand. These letters are not read aloud. They are not collected. They are simply left to be held by wood and silence. A young man kneels before the box this evening. He carries no letter, only a single stalk of blooming mugwort, still damp with dew. He lays it gently against the wood, bows once, and leaves without a word.
The road is dry now. It winds beyond the village through low hills and rice terraces where red dragonflies skim the surface of irrigation ponds. Dust rises gently with each footfall, and the sound of travel has returned. Wheels, hooves, sandals, and soft whistles from those who walk alone. A peddler approaches, pulling a cart of fabrics wrapped in oilcloth. He is thin, with a sprig of mint behind one ear. He smiles at every gate, not asking, only offering. At one home, a mother buys a square of sky blue cotton. She does not need it, but her son likes the color. The peddler bows, pockets the coin, and continues on. Farther down the road, he meets an old man resting beneath a tree. They share a handful of salted peanuts, speak of weather and road conditions. When they part, neither asks the other's name. In this world, names are less important than paths crossed. At dusk, the sun glows not red but gold, diffused through haze and high branches, casting everything in a honeyed sheen. Shadows stretch, but do not frighten. Smoke curls gently from clay chimneys. Water is poured from height to basin. Bread is broken between hands. A group of children chases fireflies through the fields, their laughter thin and bright. One falls, skinning a knee. Another helps him up. No one scolds. The fireflies continue to rise. An elder sits beneath the fig tree, brushing dust from his sleeves. He remembers a different version of the village, one with more voices, more noise, more grief, perhaps, but also more songs. He hums one now, not loudly, just enough for the wind to carry. Late at night, when all lanterns have dimmed and the last rooster has given up its watch, the river continues its eternal journey. It carries no message now, no gourd, no lanterns, only the memory of every hand that touched it, every vessel that crossed, every reflection it once held. The moon glimmers on its surface. Trees bow at its edge. A frog calls. Then silence. It does not speak of war or peace. It does not forget. And it does not judge. It simply flows. And within that flow, in the quiet rhythm of lives long faded, something remains. Not a monument, not a name. Only the shape of hands weaving cloth, the sound of footsteps on dust, the memory of voices rising, fading, and returning again. What remains is enough. The wind is lighter now. Somewhere, just beyond the frame of sight, a lantern flickers low. The paper has thinned with age, and the wax is nearly burned away, but it still holds its shape. It still holds its light. The story has not ended, not truly. We have merely stepped back from it. A single breath before the next season, a quiet moment before footsteps resume on the path. And so we return, not with banners or farewells, but with the soft sound of reeds moving in the dark, and the hush of the river that still flows beneath all things. We have spent time in a village not marked on any map. We have walked beside couriers whose names are not recorded in ledgers, whose feet wore grooves into the earth by memory alone. We have tasted the broth in clay bowls, counted the silent prayers tied to lantern frames, and watched ink dry on letters never meant to be sent. These were not the lives of emperors or generals, not the ones carved into stone or sung by court musicians. But they were lives that breathed. And if you listened, really listened, you may have heard your own heartbeat reflected in theirs. You may have felt the quiet grief of the herbalist as she folded crushed magnolia leaves into small envelopes, or the hesitation in the young boy's voice when he asked the blacksmith if the war would come back. You may have shared the stillness of a boatman who did not measure time in hours, but in ripples and currents and the weight of things unspoken. Here, in this space between histories, this hush between chapters, the world did not stop turning. It simply turned quietly, in kitchens where smoke rose in threads from rice pots, in fields where frogs called before the rains, in shrines where no priest officiated, but where someone still knelt once to leave behind a sprig of mugwort and a thought too heavy for words. The Three Kingdoms era, a time often remembered for blood and banners, for cunning schemes and famous betrayals, was also a time of silence, of patience, of returning home when the road allowed it, of planting seeds without knowing who would eat the fruit. Let us not forget that history is not only the noise of swords, it is also the long patience of the loom, the rhythm of hands returning again and again to the work that keeps life going despite thunder on the horizon. We saw a girl with a lute far too large for her arms, singing a song meant for no one, and we saw how, despite that, the wind listened, how her voice carried across fields, not to applause, but to memory. We watched a soldier sip tea, hands trembling not from chill, but from something deeper, and we watched how no one asked him to explain. That too is a kind of peace, a kind of understanding that does not require answers, only presence. What remains of a time like this? Not dates, not victories. What remains is the mark of a reed boat pulled onto a muddy bank. The smell of pickled radish sold in jars with careful handwriting. The warm weight of cloth dyed in walnut husk folded for someone who has not yet returned. Somewhere the river still carries a gourd with a red string tied around its neck. It has passed from hand to hand, through war and waiting, through silence and prayer. Maybe it still floats, maybe it waits for you. We are so used to history being loud, but sometimes the most truthful histories are the ones that whisper. Through door hinges fixed at dawn, through half-forgotten songs hummed beneath fig trees, through a single plum placed on a cloth where no merchant stands. To remember these moments is not to retreat from history, but to meet it face to face in its gentler clothing. And so we end, not with a proclamation, but a return, to the child's laugh chasing fireflies, to the woman's fingers guiding thread through hemp, to the soft thud of footsteps on a dry road where names are forgotten but kindness is not. If you close your eyes now, you may still see the lanterns drifting. Some have gone out, some have reached the sea,
Some still glow faintly, caught in reeds, waiting for someone to notice. And perhaps that someone is you. When you leave this story behind, you do not leave it empty. You carry the hush of the tea pavilion, the stillness of the ferry dock at dawn. The silence after a fire has gone cold, but before a new one is lit. You carry the knowledge that even in the fiercest of ages, there were those who planted rice, tuned strings, folded letters, and waited for spring. And you carry the quiet truth that survival is not just in the sword, but in the hand that weaves cloth, in the breath that steadies, in the voice that sings, even when no one is listening. Thank you for spending this time in stillness, for letting history breathe in slow rhythm. The story continues. It always does. But for now, we rest. We drift. We remember. We return. Fade to black. The sound of water. The call of a night heron. Then silence.